Hello, dear friends. Hello, dear friends all over the world. We're warmly welcoming you to our show this morning, to our program. And first of all, we're wishing you a very happy new year. Thank you for joining us at the Spiritist Talk series, which are promoted by the United States Spiritist Federation every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I am very happy to be here to host this talk today and to have Edward Christie, who will be leading our life with the theme Blessed are the Peacemakers. I would like to take a brief moment for some announcements first. If you're interested in learning more about Spiritism, you can watch the complete course entitled Initiation into Spiritism at Your Pace, with lessons and Q&A sessions, also at our YouTube channel. And please stay tuned for future announcements on a follow-up course for next year, for this year. More details to come soon. And secondly, on the screen, please note that there is a QR code. If you want to help the United States Spiritist Federation produce more publications and promote Spiritism to everyone, we kindly ask you to scan the QR code for your donations. Thank you so much. And now back to you, Edward. It is so good to have you here with us today.
Thank you, Sandra. And it's a sunny day too, so beautiful winter morning here in Brooklyn.
Oh, wonderful. Yes, that always helps, doesn't it?
It does, yes. Up the heart.
Yeah. So together with everyone who is watching this live broadcast now, I want to give you a very warm welcome, Edward. And I'm sure that you listeners, as we are, equally eager to hear what you will bring to us today. And let me introduce you, Edward. Just a minute here. Edward has been involved with Spiritism for more than 20 years and is an active member of the Inner Enlightenment Spiritist Society. Edward is a classically trained pianist, has taught music in New York City schools, as well as computer science courses at NYU. He enjoys learning and uses his love of teaching to share what he has learned with others. We warmly welcome you, Edward. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure. So I took my first computer programming course 41 years ago. Boy, that's perspective. And I still remember something that the teacher said. 3 things can go wrong with a computer program. It can produce unexpected results, it could do nothing, or it could blow up. As a novice programmer, I had to take this on faith. But after years of correcting programming errors, I found my teacher's rule to be true. Because computers and the programs that run on them are human inventions, they inherit human strengths and weaknesses. To understand how something like a computer program can go wrong, it's useful to look at what it means to be human. Givaldo Franco, in his book, I Love Myself, I'm Addiction Free, says that we've inherited a body that's the result of millions of years of evolution, and an intelligence that's new, only some 10,000 years old. He tells us that research suggests that 80% of the world's population live from the mouth down, living to put food in their stomachs, clothes on their backs, and a roof over their heads. We know how to care for the body. We can use our instincts to care for our physical well-being. We eat when we're hungry, we sleep when we're drowsy, and we look for a way to warm up when we get cold. We can't, however, rely on instinctive knowledge to care for our psychological health because human nature doesn't have these instincts. So, how can we care for our psychological health? How do we feed our intelligence, protect ourselves of right action, and clothe our understanding of what humans are for? Jesus tells us clearly what humans are for, what we're supposed to do, and what the purpose of our life is. Jesus doesn't ask us to be powerful or successful or great or a winner or even enlightened. He doesn't say, "Thou shalt be right." Jesus doesn't ask for sinless perfection, but only for a change of heart and to go and sin no more. Jesus tells us that what we're here for is heart work. Relationship is everywhere in Jesus' teaching. Jesus told us to love God and one another, to forgive each other, to reconcile with our brothers, to love our enemies, to lay our hands on the sick, and to be a peacemaker. Jesus loved those that seemed unlovable, forgave those who seemed unforgivable, cured those that seemed incurable, and he asks us to do the same. He taught us to pray by saying, "Our Father," not "my Father. Give us this day our daily bread," not "give me this day my daily bread." He said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God." We're brothers and sisters of the human family called to make peace with one another, regardless of the differences that separate us. Strength seems inherently aggressive, and it takes a new thinking, a Christ consciousness, to see strength in peace. We build relations not through power, but through community that includes everyone. Every encounter we have with someone else changes us. From the moment we're born, we're aware of other people's emotions and actions. And when we respond, our inner world and outer expression change. A newborn can hardly see, and yet within an hour of its being born, a baby can imitate the expressions of the people around it. We're interconnected at the deepest levels. That we each decided being here is what we wanted to do with our time this morning is the result of countless encounters across many incarnations. Everything we do, say, and experience exists in a web of relationships. When we interact with others, we come to know ourselves. We experience our impatience, our intolerance, and our irritation, our compassion, our concern, and our contentment. Without others, these emotions might be hidden in some dark corner of our awareness that makes us blind to what's going on inside of us. It's in the messiness of everyday living that we come to know ourselves. A Zen story shows us how deeply we're influenced by others. There were two brothers who vowed to devote their life to attaining peace of mind. One brother went to the top of a mountain to learn how to quiet his mind until he could hold a ball of snow in his hand without it melting. The other brother stayed at the bottom of the mountain, helping the village and its people. Years passed, and Mountain Brother came down holding a ball of snow to show Village Brother that he had learned how to still his mind. When he found him, Village Brother was treating the wound of a young woman, and her clothes were pulled up to reveal her leg. Immediately, the ball of snow melted in Mountain Brother's hand. It took only a moment with another person for Mountain Brother to lose his peace. Defining peacemaking is as tricky as defining love or forgiveness. So I'm going to look at peacemaking the way a professional approaches her work. A lawyer can help you if you have trouble with the law, but lawyers can't make you a good citizen. A teacher can help you if you lack knowledge, but teachers can't develop your intelligence. A doctor can help you if you have a disease, but doctors can't create good health. These professionals recognize that the remedy for trouble with the law, disease, and lacking knowledge is essentially external, while intelligence, good citizenship, and health must be developed internally by each one of us. We don't lack external truth. We have plenty of teachings. What we need to do is to reflect on the meaning of those teachings, to find out how they are true for each one of us. And no one can do that work for you. If you let that happen, you'll be living someone else's life. So I might be able to help you with how peacemaking can go wrong, but to be a peacemaker is an inside job. Peacemaking can go wrong in ways similar to my teacher's rule on computer programs. Peacemaking can blow up, do nothing, or produce unexpected results. So let's take this time to look at how peacemaking can go wrong in these ways. My teacher told me that computer programs can go wrong by blowing up. A program that blows up has reached a limitation, either of the computer itself or the skill of the programmer. Instead of handling the limitation, the program figuratively throws up its hands and says, "I can't do this." In daily life, blowing up is a sign that we have reached the limit of our ability to make peace, and anger has taken over. When anger speaks, it says, "I don't want what I'm getting," or "I'm not getting what I want." Anger thinks that something or someone is wrong or bad or an enemy. Anger wants something or someone to change and overestimates our ability to control events and people. Our free will allows us to choose our actions. Our free will does not give us the ability to control the outcome of our choices. Mahatma Gandhi says, "Man is the maker of his own destiny, in the sense that he has freedom of choice as to the manner in which he uses his freedom. But he is no controller of results. Once he thinks he is, he comes to grief." When we forget this, when we think that we can control the outcome of our choices, anger will burst out when things don't go our way. Anger's closest ally is impatience, because anger wants things to change, and impatience can't wait for things to change. Impatience lives in a world of instantaneous solutions, and everything has to happen right now. Someone must change immediately, and the situation must be corrected this instant. The bond between anger and impatience is the desire for change, a desire based on emotion. We've all had a visit from anger and impatience. These two visit me many times a day in varying degrees. My job is to be a good host and introduce these two emotions to the virtue of patience. Emotions like anger and impatience can't be controlled by our will. Unlike emotions, patience is a choice, a conscious use of our will to make friends with anger and impatience. Patience doesn't take away these emotions, but it steers them in a new direction. Patience is like windshield wipers in a storm. Pressing the wiper button on the dashboard doesn't stop the rain, but it does help us to see more clearly where we're going. Patience is a choice, something that comes from the power of our will. But once anger and impatience show their face, choosing patience is difficult. So patience requires us to train with the little things. Because if we make a big deal out of little things, what will we do when the big ones come? We're experts at using our intelligence to make ourselves irritated. We complain that the weather is too hot or too cold, or too many mosquitoes in the summer. The trains take so long to come. The lines are so long in the supermarket, and there are so many bad drivers on the road. complaining about irritations, is the junk food that anger and impatience feed on. We get irritated because of the way we think. Shantideva, the 8th century Buddhist monk, puts it this way: if you walk barefoot, your feet will get cut by stones, wet from puddles, and burned by hot sand. You can think, the world is too sharp, too wet, and too hot. If I cover the entire world with leather, nothing will ever bother my feet again. But wait, isn't it more reasonable to wrap a little bit of leather around my feet? Then I could walk anywhere, and my feet will be protected from the sharp, wet, and hot earth. See, it's not the world that needs to change, but how we live in the world. We can't eliminate all pain and suffering, but we can pay attention to our thoughts, to our likes and our dislikes, whether we think something is for us or against us, or whether we agree or disagree with the way things are, so that when irritation comes, we can meet it with patience that we've practiced before anger and impatience pay us another visit. It's not only our thoughts, but also the words we speak that matter, because peacemaking depends on our words. The words we say matter because they reflect what's in our heart. In Matthew's gospel, we hear, on the day of judgment, people will give account for every careless word they speak. And whatever comes out of the mouth comes from the heart. And that's what defiles a person. In the book of James, we read, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. Our Western culture idolizes self-expression. I have a right to say what I think and feel, and of course you do. But what would happen if you stayed silent and took time to consider the consequences of saying what you think and feel? How many restless nights have you spent regretting something you said? Did what you say bring pain into the world? Did your words make the situation worse? Did expressing yourself cause division? Peacemaking reminds us to keep silent when we want to change someone, to violate their free will, or to say things that bring pain and division. Peacemaking tells us to speak when our words unite, words that protect the goodness in ourselves and others. My teacher told me that computer programs can go wrong when they do nothing. The program doesn't blow up, it works, but nothing happens. Saying nothing happens is too hasty a conclusion because computer programs rarely do nothing. A computer program can have thousands of individual instructions, and all of them can work just as I intended, and yet not produce any result I can see. Peacemaking can be like this. Peacemaking can seem to do nothing to end differences and bring about peace. We're skeptical of peacemaking because we think it won't produce anything significant. We fear that peacemaking will label us as unrealistic and will be seen as weak and laughed at. And we can lose hope, saying, I've been working so hard to make peace, and nothing I do works. St. Paul clears our vision. He says of this skepticism, where does this leave the philosophers, the scholars, and the world's brilliant debaters? God has made the wisdom of this world look foolish. And again, for the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God. And one more time, God has chosen the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. And God has chosen the weak things of the world to shame the things which are strong. See, peacemaking looks foolish to the wise because they follow the wisdom of the world that values winning and results. The wisdom of God does not concern itself with results, but rather with right action and right work. The writer and theologian Thomas Merton wrote, "Do not depend on the hope of results. When you are doing the sort of work you have taken on, you may have to meet the fact that your work will be apparently worthless and achieve no result at all, if not perhaps results opposite to what you expect. As you get used to this idea, you start more and more to concentrate not on the results, but on the value, the rightness, the truth of the work itself." Well, what is right work? Let's use health as an example. Say I go to my doctor and tell her, "Doc, I want to be healthy. What should I do?" What she would say to me, "Eat healthful foods, exercise, get enough rest, have a hobby, stay connected with family and friends." Oh, hey, if I do all those things, I'm going to be healthy? And she'd say, "Well, I can't guarantee you're going to be healthy, but you'll be doing the right things for your health." When we decide to be spiritually healthy, we focus on right action. We love, even if it's conditional. Forgive, even when I still feel hurt. Reconcile, even if only partially. Make peace, even if it seems to do nothing. We don't control results. So if we concentrate on the outcome of our work, we'll only be disappointed and give up when what we want doesn't happen on our timetable. And results can be deceiving. Something that looks good may turn out to be harmful. Hey, eating a pint of ice cream might sound like a good idea, but watch out for the consequences. And something that's painful may turn out to have benefits. We would never stick a baby with a pin, but we bring them to doctors who give them shots to preserve their health. It's hard to get work right because work often means doing something that someone else tells us is valuable. We might be able to do this to earn a living, but not with spiritual work. Spiritual work values the work itself, or otherwise work becomes a means to an end to get something good or avoid something bad. And there we are, right back to working in the hopes of getting a result. We can work hard to conform to the rules, lead a sinless life, be regular in every way, and still live a life that's without peace. We can practice the law inside and out, and our hearts can be cold and hard. In the Spirit's book, the divine or natural law of work tells us that there's a limit to work, that the limit is the limit of our strength, and we must decide on this point individually. When we strain at work, we push ourselves beyond the limit of our strength. We might be able to do this for a short time, but we have a mistaken view of human nature if we think we can strain at work indefinitely. If we work this way, our effort will eventually be defeated. You don't have to believe me. Ask anyone who's ever been on a diet, and they'll tell you how true this is. The work we do must be rooted not in force and strain, but in love and peace. If we're miserable in our work, or our work makes others miserable, it very likely means we're frustrated because we're not getting the results that we expect from our work. The limit of work is found in our limit to be able to work with a peaceful heart. We trust in the value, the rightness, the truth of the work itself. And our work creates not strain and misery, but peace and unity. Martin Luther King Jr. dedicated much of his life's work to exposing racism through nonviolent protest. He said, "Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go up to the mountain, and I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we, as a people, will get to the promised land." King spoke these words on April 3rd, 1968, On the next day, he was shot and killed. Martin Luther King Jr. was often defeated and weary, and when he died, his work wasn't finished. But he kept his focus on right work, creating peace and listening to the will of God. His work seemed insurmountable, and he died a martyr's death. But he trusted in the value, the rightness, and the truth of his work because it was grounded in the love for his fellow man. My teacher told me that computer programs can go wrong when they don't produce the expected results. The program works, but the results are not what I intended. I found that this kind of error is common when I've oversimplified the problem. I didn't allow for the complexity of the information that I had to work with. St. Augustine helps us understand the danger of simplistic, black and white, all or nothing thinking. As a young man, Augustine anxiously sought the answer to the question, where does evil come from? The problem is this: if God is good, he would want his creatures to be happy. And if God were all powerful, he could do as he wished. But creatures aren't happy. So God lacks either goodness or power or both. Now, for most of us, we can ask this question, discuss it for a little while, and then get a good night's rest. Not St. Augustine. Augustine was a passionate young man, and he wrestled with this question. He felt he had to get this right in order to live a life that had real meaning. He found his first answer in the solution offered by Manichaeism. This religious movement is based on a rather complex creation myth that I won't even try to summarize. Instead, I'll give you an idea of the one belief that Manichaeism is known for until today. Manichaeism teaches that there's a battle between two moral opposites, two equally strong supreme powers that are competing for our souls. In other religions, these two are called God and the devil. One power is in goodness and light, and the other is evil and in darkness. The good principle rules over a spiritual realm, and the evil principle rules over the material world. Well, that settled it for Augustine. God is good and powerful because he has nothing to do with the bad stuff. That's all caused by the evil power. It's so simple. Why didn't I think of that? After being a Manichae for 10 years, Augustine became unhappy with this answer to the question of why evil exists. He began to take the Bible seriously and read that there was one God who created everything, and everything he created he called good. Moral evil is not the result of an evil power, but is rather the result of human free will. God doesn't prevent the evil that comes from our choices because free will is a good that God gave to humans. Our will gives us the power to choose what we most desire: God and his permanent love, or something material and temporary. Augustine says that God could prevent us from doing evil by taking away our free will, but he prefers to show his love by bringing good out of evil, rather than to have a world where evil doesn't exist. Now, all this might sound a little bit philosophical. So let's think of the idea of one unifying principle versus two conflicting principles this way. Say I buy a new shirt, try it on, and find that there's a hole in it. I can't remove the hole and return it to the store. My shirt isn't made from two substances, one good and one bad, a shirt and a hole. The hole exists because the shirt exists. And without a shirt, there's no hole. I might not want to keep the shirt if it doesn't do what a shirt should do, protect and beautify the body. Of course, these days, holes in clothes are stylish, so I might keep the shirt anyway. But we go wrong when we think of defects in people the same way that we think of defects in a shirt. Jesus tells us that people are made to love and be loved, which we show through forgiveness, reconciliation, and peacemaking. People are not made to be free from damage and defects, but rather to use their freedom to make peace, to forgive, and to love. Augustine says that moral evil doesn't have its own existence, like the hole in my shirt, but is rather a lack of the good. The belief in one God and human free will makes it easy for us to accept this. But we often see the world as a manichae, dividing the world into good and bad, right and wrong, light and dark. We can think the manichae belief in two equal forces, one good and one evil, is misguided. But we think this way when we see people as good or evil, as if they were created by two different powers. Objective good and evil do exist, but we go wrong when we use our prejudices, biases, and incomplete understanding as a measure of good and evil. We can see the good in others subjectively or objectively. We see the good in others subjectively when we ask, what does this person mean to me? Do I approve of them? Can they treat me right? Will they help me? And we can see the good in others objectively. Every person we meet has intelligence, reason, free will, imagination, creativity, and most importantly, the capacity to love. We're skilled at finding the wrongs that others do, but the wrongs that we see are not in the person. The wrong is in the action or the use of the will. A person could do something evil or criminal, but no matter what evil a person does, he cannot make his human nature evil because he is created as good by a good God. And as we open our vision, we see that human free will is a good, independent of how it's used. Seeing the good in others objectively and loving the good changes us both. Loving the good in others changes them because now they know that they are lovable. And they're loved in spite of their faults, because their faults are overshadowed by the tremendous amount of good that God has placed in them. Loving the good in others changes us because once we see others as lovable, we have to learn to love them right. And when we love them right, we become peacemakers. It can be that simple. My teacher's 3 ways that computer programs can go wrong helped me to mature as a programmer and also opened my vision to peacemaking. As insightful as my teacher's rule is, I know I won't remember it when I'm stressed or upset. What I can do is develop a peaceful mind before trouble strikes. We often pray for help so that we can put into practice what we've learned. Well, that prayer is answered when we practice. So here are 3 practices we can use to develop our peacemaking skills. I gave them names. I call them making room for the 10%, offering silent intentions, and the breath of patience. Skill number 1. When peacemaking gets unexpected results, it means that we've lost the true value of a relationship. And that is to love the good in another person. Our prejudices, biases, and incomplete understanding prevent us from seeing the good in others. None of us has the whole truth. Each of us sees only part of the truth. Making peace with others means holding more than one truth in my mind and asking, what truth does this person have that I don't? The Franciscan speaker and writer Richard Rohr gives us a way of putting this idea into practice. This skill, making room for the 10%, is aimed at our intention to make peace with the limits of our understanding. Richard Rohr suggests this. When I disagree with something that someone says, I admit that that person is at least 10% correct. Admitting that the person has at least 10% of the truth makes room for the other person's truth in my thinking. Making room for the 10%, we love the good in others because we see that we're all searching for the truth. Skill number 2. When peacemaking seems to do nothing, it means we've lost faith in the value of right work. Valuing right work tests our belief in reincarnation and immortal life. That what we do now has a cumulative meaning apart from the seeming insignificance of everyday life. This skill, offering silent intentions, is aimed at our desire to make peace with right work. I call them silent intentions because you don't say these intentions out loud. You say them only to yourself. To someone you love, think, may you be happy. To someone you pass on the street, think, may you have peace. To someone you work with, think, may you be healthy. To someone who challenges or mistreats you, think, may you be loved. To someone in a position of power, think, may you be free from suffering. Offering silent intentions blocks our habit to judge people, teaches us to want the good for others, and creates a mind ready to make peace. Skill number 3. When instead of peacemaking we blow up, we give into a force that strengthens our ego and blinds us to our deeper nature. Blowing up exhausts our breath. Choosing patience gives us time to breathe and wait for a peaceful response. This skill, the breath of patience, is aimed at our intention to make peace with our deep capacity for patience. Place a hand on your heart and breathe in before saying each of these statements. I am a spirit. I am immortal. I am changing. I am forgiven. I am loved. The breath of patience awakens us to our deeper nature and is our halfway house to peace. Making room for the 10%, offering silent intentions, and the breath of patience are just 3 skills we can use to visualize peacemaking. I invite you to try them for yourself. They may open the door of peace to you. I want to leave you with a quote from spiritual writer and theologian Henry Nouwen. Nouwen suffered from clinical depression and wrote openly about his loneliness and personal struggles. He wrote, "Only one thing seems clear to me. Every day should be well lived. Did I offer peace today? Did I bring a smile to someone's face? Did I offer words of healing? Did I let go of my anger and resentment? Did I forgive? Did I love?" These are the real questions. I must trust that the little bit of love that I sow now will bear many fruits here in this life and in the life to come. Henry Nouwen's words paint a picture of a world that Jesus spoke of when he said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God." Jesus' world is one filled with reconciliation, healing, and peacemaking. A world big enough for all of us. I thank you.
Edward, thank you so much for your wonderful reflections, for your talk. And yes, you did bring a smile to our faces. Thank you. We are now open to some questions and discussions.
Okay.
So, mhm. Our first question is from the United States Spiritist Federation, and it is it possible to be a peacemaker and set healthy boundaries for oneself?
Well, what a beautiful question. Um, yes, yes. I would say, from my understanding, we are. It's required for us to set healthy boundaries. The question that we have to ask ourselves is where we set the boundaries. And this becomes really important because that's what maturity is about. When we do set boundaries, but they get larger and larger, if you want to look at it that way, or they change at any rate as we mature. Certainly, a young person, their boundaries are very small, and you can step on them very easily. But it really requires a reflection to find out, well, what are my boundaries and why are they there? We can't live without boundaries. We have a skin that is a boundary between what goes on in our body and the external world, and that's a reflection too of the kind of boundary that we require day to day. But it's really our responsibility every day to say, when someone crosses a boundary, what that means for me, and why that boundary is there, and is it healthy, and does it does is it healthy? I'll leave it at that.
Mhm. Yes, that's a very good question. And then one wonders what's the definition of healthy, right?
Yes, right. There's some beautiful definitions of health out there. When you say, when you're able to lay your head down on a pillow at night and feel like, with a clear conscience, um, when you can handle situations that come up with equanimity, um, and really, peacemaking, when you think about it, is all about unity. And we have to decide, unity doesn't have to look the same in every situation.
Mhm.
But the idea is, when we often fail in peacemaking because it might be a little strong way of saying it, but that we want to violate someone's free will. We want someone to do what we think is the right thing to do.
Mhm.
So that's why peacemaking, it requires us constantly, um, first of all, to look at ourselves, to practice peacemaking, because it's not a natural thing. Our as related to the first question, our boundaries are often very thick and impenetrable. So we have to really look at that's how it starts out. That's how we start out, and so it becomes more open and more porous, that we could, we don't have to. Everything isn't just black and white in the world. We're
Yeah.
able to think about peacemaking in that way. Yes.
And the spirits so lovingly gave us the golden rule, right? So that probably, would you say that's important to pay attention to in peacemaking as well?
Well, certainly, there's peace is hanging off of every word in the golden rule. It's like the balls on the Christmas tree. It really, it really enhances and brings to life those words.
Yeah.
Of course, in order to love, we have to think about, what does it mean to make peace with someone else, and why is there, where does the conflict arise?
Yeah.
Is
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, is it out? Is it out? We think about, it's because someone else did a wrong thing, that we can't make peace. But you see, peace is possible. We just have to practice.
Right, right. Yes. Yes. Thank you so much, Edward. And I think there is another question. Yes, there is. Again, from the USSF. What role do you think does humility play in peacemaking?
Well, another great question. I would say, what role do you think humility plays in blank? Because humility is just across the board. We often think, as I think I pointed out in the talk, we often think that we understand everything, and and we don't. We really just have a partial view. And once we realize um, that there's more out there for us to learn, we can approach each situation with humility. And of course, one of the things that might be easy to overlook is that humility is always in our relation to God. We understand our smallness in relation to God, not just between us and other human beings, or us and the world in general, but our humility is a result of our relationship to God. And so when we remember our relationship to God, humility is just a natural response. And God is always looking to make peace with us. He's always looking to draw us closer and closer. Where our spirit is made from love. There is nothing else there but love, and so we're made from that, and therefore, uh, anything that causes a division within ourselves, between us and God, between us and other people, between us and the world, doesn't come from from our spirit. It comes from what's usually referred to as the ego.
Yeah, we need to love our ego in the right place, right? So
That's
moving it,
yeah.
loving the ego mind.
No,
Yeah.
it's really true. I mean, we people say you get rid of the ego, but the ego is really necessary.
Mhm.
It helps to preserve our life. We wouldn't be able to manage living in this material world without an ego. But our job is to be aware of the functioning of the ego, because a lot of what goes on in the ego is unconscious or preconscious or subconscious.
Mhm.
So that's why I say that peacemaking really requires us constantly to reflect back on ourselves. When we're hurt by something that someone says, um, it's the ego that gets hurt, not our spirit. So when we get hurt by something that someone says, we want to lash out, perhaps, and not create peace. But when we start to see that we are, as spirits, we are made from peace, we are made from love, then we can question our ego. Why did that bother me?
Mhm.
Why am I disturbed? Why am I hurt by that? Because it's not my soul, it's not my spirit that's hurt. it's it's the ego that's hurt. And that's why peacemaking requires constant inner work. And that's why the practices, peacemaking practices, are just so important, because we won't get it without a practice.
Yes. And that's what we're here for, right? In our beautiful incarnation. Yes, and thank you for making it so clear of what the steps are and how we can boost our peacemaking skills.
Yes.
Yes, beautiful. So here's another question. Are you ready?
Yes, certainly.
Okay, so it is in a polarized world we are living nowadays. How does one can be a peacemaker?
Well, this is a this is a question very close to my heart, because I found myself very much caught up in uh, things that go on in the world. Certainly, with the situation in the Ukraine, and then in our own political system here, and the political system in Brazil, you automatically, um, I automatically find myself taking sides, and so it required. As I mean, I won't say I was always successful at it, but it really required inward looking, because a lot of what happens when we see something that happens in the world, what we're doing is projecting what is going on inside of us. We can't handle what's going on inside of us, so we do this projection thing where we place the blame on someone else, because it's much easier if I'm mad at myself to be mad at you.
Yeah.
Or if I'm angry with myself or disappointed or whatever it might be, it's much easier to take that feeling and put it out there in the world. So yeah, this is certainly not an easy question. I was joking once. Um, my wife had asked me to play a piece of music by Chopin that I thought was way above my abilities, and so I told her I was going to start working on the piece. I was start working on the music right after I achieved world peace, because the two things seemed equally out of reach.
Uh-huh.
I did work on the piece, and it was okay, but that was the idea, that I took that as a challenge, because peacemaking starts with our families. It starts with ourselves, but it also starts within our family. If we keep peace within our family, we have a way of peacemaking in the world is person by person. So the first thing that we have to do is make peace with ourselves, make peace with God, make peace with our neighbors, and that way it can grow. Because we're not all here to solve the world's problems. We're certainly no one cares about my opinion about what's going on in the Ukraine. So I really can't. If I take that on myself, it'll just cause a lot of misery and strain in my life and everyone around me. I won't be doing the job that I'm here to do. So the first thing to do is make peace. Well, of course, the hardest peace to make is with God, because we still want to be in charge, and we want to play God. So we have to come to peace with God to understand our relation to Him, and that He does love us and wants to be loved back. Let's put it that way. And so it starts with there. It starts looking inside of us, and especially with our families, because we know that everyone in our family we're placed in the family that we're meant to be placed in, and it is for our growth and our whether it's a trial or an expiation, whatever it might be. But the family that we're placed in is so important for us to handle, because it's bringing up all the things that are blocking us from being a peacemaker. So, and that is a job that's given to you. It's a job that's given to me. As I said, I'm not here to figure out what goes on with the U.S. government or the Brazilian government or what's going on in the Ukraine. But my job is with me, God, and my family. That's how we start.
Yes, beautiful, Edward. Yes, it's really actually simple, and yet we forget, because in the day to day, it then becomes rather challenging.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. So here's another question: would you think that peacemaking is a process where time uncovers the blessings we receive, so we get to recognize them?
Well, that sounds a little more like gratitude to me, where we understand the blessings that we receive, and certainly peacemaking is there in the mix, because if we have a hard heart or a cold heart towards ourselves, towards God, towards other people, it's really going to be impossible to feel that gratitude. And so peacemaking is kind of the foundation of so much of our, if you want to call it progress, so much of our growth, so much of our changing towards the people that God has created us to be. So looking at peacemaking, yeah, that's the way I see it. It's like the foundation, and without that, it'll be very hard to love. Without that, it's very hard to be grateful. or to do much of anything.
Yes. Beautiful. Gratitude is important, right? And seeing, yeah, and seeing what we've accomplished.
Yeah, because we, if you think about it, we came into this world with nothing. We're going to leave the same way, and well, we have um, our spiritual progress that we carry with us.
Yes. Yeah.
But everything else, and including our lives, have been given to us. So that's why gratitude is is so important. But it's very hard to uncover that gratitude when we're feeling um, divided.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that's what peacemaking's. If I could just say for one thing, like I said, it's really hard to define it, but peacemaking is unity.
Mm-hmm.
And we are most of our lives we're separated from things, we're dividing things, where this person is, I like this person, I don't like them, we're doing all this, we're causing division instead of unity. So peacemaking requires that unity, and once we can start to find our place in that unity, those things, something like gratitude, can really come flower.
It reminds me in the little book Light Ahead, which is by different spirits. Emmanuel says in one chapter, he talks about unity and he defines it as our realization, our knowing, our living, the fact that we're all children of God. And in what you're talking about, right? Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be children of God." It's right in there, isn't it? So beautiful, and you're talking about it, so that reminded me of that.
It's right there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We are brothers and sisters, maybe not by blood, but if we're all from God, we're all brothers and sisters.
And right there, that helps us so much, doesn't it?
It does. It really
Yeah,
does.
yeah. Thank you, Edward.
You're welcome.
And I think there is a comment by Mary Dulce Novaretti, and she says, For me, be a peacemaker is not easy. I know, but it's not impossible. We just need to practice."
Well, Mary, you answered your own question. I really feel this. It's really in the practice that we learn how to do this. It's not a natural. It's if we created simple in ignorance, peacemaking is not part of that process. Peacemaking is something is really an act of the will. If you look at it that way, I mean, we can't will ourselves to be peacemakers, but we can make choices to move in that direction, and that's really what the uh, when we think about the power that God has given us to have free will. He says, you have this power. Now you have to decide how you're going to use it, and that's not just an intellectual exercise. That is really a practice, a daily practice. How do we deal with, as I think I said somewhere, in the messiness of everyday life? Things are not going to go as planned. Things are going to happen that we don't expect. And so the practice is, the practice to me is always before things happen. And that's why practicing is so important. As a musician, I can't just get up and perform. I have to practice hours and hours and hours, depending, especially that piece that my wife wanted me to learn. It took like 6 months, So this is a very, very important thing. Without the practice, and that's why our prayer, we do ask, let me put into practice the things that I've learned, but we have to practice, and then that prayer is answered if we do. We have put it into practice, even if it's some small way. Put time aside to practice whatever it is that allows you to build up that desire for unity in people. between you and, as I said, between you and God, between you and yourself, between you and other people in your family or around you, the people that you work with. And when something happens that bothers you, you have to ask yourself, what what's going on inside me? Why do I feel that way? Because it could either be that it touched something inside you that you know is true, but you don't want to admit it to yourself, or it could be that the person just said something that was, untrue. And even Joanna Giangelis talks about this in The Happy Life. She says, if you did something, someone blames you for something, and you did something wrong, you think about it, you say, yes, I did it. I'm going to correct it. And if it's not right, then it's really the other person's issue at that point, that they're trying to put something on you. So practice, practice, practice. That I've been a musician a long time, and there's nothing that is going to replace practicing. And that's true for our spiritual life too. We have to find the practice. And setting aside a time for a practice, I find for me, is really important. I have a small practice that I do every day. I wake up early in the morning, and I take time, half an hour or so, to do reading, spiritual reading of some kind, and praying. I mean, these things really start to change when we do these things, when we have a real practice, not just when things come up in our life. Of course, that's good too. Anything that causes us to practice is good, but we also have to have an intentional practice. Me and my wife, we pray every night before we go to bed. It was not an easy thing to do, I have to admit. We've been doing it for many years, but when it started out, I felt like I still wanted to have my way. I still wanted to do the things that I thought were important. But over the years, that practice has really shown, it's really borne fruit. And I started to see how it just permeates my whole life. So practice, 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 intentional practice. And then as things come up in our life, to then we have to use whatever we've practiced at that point. That's really kind of the issue. When things come up, we can't practice then. You practice before.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sits me down at the piano bench, says play, and if I haven't practiced, I'm going like, well, blah 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 blah. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Right.
Everything has to happen before when it comes to peacemaking.
Yes. Thank you so much, Edward. This was profound and so timely at the same time, since we just began a new year and you're really clarifying the importance of practice. So it boosts our desire to re-enroll in the gym of the soul and stay with it, right? It's like building the muscles of the soul of practicing peacemaking.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Edward. Thank you again. And we also thank all the listeners who were here today to attending this live talk, and all the future ones and the past ones. And we just want to say that next Saturday, we have Kirsten de Mello, who will be talking about obedience and resignation. We can't wait for this week to pass while we're practicing to attend this new talk. Thank you so much. And so before we close, would you be willing to lead us into a closing prayer, Edward?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Heavenly Father, I thank you for this group of people with such strong intention to find out how to make peace, to allow that practice that you've given us, that ability and our will that you've given to us and to me, to make peace, to reflect the unity that you feel with each creation of yours, to see that this is a fundamental part of our lives. That to be a peacemaker, to be united with each other, to feel that unity is how we create the love and the patience and the peace that you've placed in each one of us. And it's just waiting to be awakened, waiting to come to fruition, waiting to be real and part of our everyday life. Bless this community whose intention is so deep and so strong to create that peace. Bless each of us as we leave this meeting and go throughout the day, that we carry your message of peace, and Jesus' message of peace close to our heart always. So be it.
And so it is. Thank you, Edward, and thank you to all the listeners. And have a beautiful weekend.